The studio smelled of oil paint and turpentine. Jiho stood before his latest canvas, brush in hand, staring at the half-finished portrait of a Velrosian merchant. The alien's 6 eyes gleamed back at him from the painting. But something was missing. It always was, until he found it. That hidden thing beneath the surface. That truth people carried, but never showed. He heard the door slide open behind him. Heavy footsteps. Heavier than usual. Jiho didn't turn around immediately. He added one more stroke of shadow beneath the merchant's lowest pair of eyes. There. That was it. The exhaustion of pretending everything was fine. Are you the human painter? The voice was deep, with a strange resonance that made the air vibrate slightly. Jiho set down his brush and turned. A Draken stood in his doorway. She was massive, nearly 7 feet tall, with scales that shimmered deep crimson in the studio's warm light. Her armor was black and silver, covering most of her body, but he could see her face. Sharp features, golden eyes that glowed faintly, and horns that curved back from her temples. But it was the scars that drew his attention. They ran across her face like lightning, old and deep, telling stories of violence. Jiho's heart hammered in his chest. He remembered the news broadcasts from 10 years ago. The Draken fleet, descending on human colonies. Cities, burning. His sister's face, the last time he saw her, before the evacuation ships separated them forever. Before her ship was destroyed. I am Jiho, he said, keeping his voice steady. I paint. The Draken woman stepped fully into the studio, and the door closed behind her. She moved with controlled power, like a predator who knew exactly how dangerous she was. She stopped a few feet away from him, her eyes scanning the paintings that covered his walls. They say you paint truth, she said. Not just what people look like, but what they are. I try, Jiho said carefully. His hand wanted to shake, but he wouldn't let it. Not in front of her. She was silent for a long moment, studying a painting of a Thorian diplomat. In it, Jiho had captured the weight of guilt the diplomat carried for a treaty that had killed thousands. The painting showed him not in his formal robes, but hunched and small, drowning in shadows of his own making. Yes, the Draken woman said softly. You see, she turned back to him, and for the first time, Jiho saw something in her eyes beyond danger. It looked almost like fear. I want you to paint me, she said. Jiho stared at her. Why? Because no one has ever painted a Draken, she said. We don't allow it. Our image is controlled by the Empire. We are meant to be weapons, symbols of power, nothing more. Then why risk it? Jiho asked. She reached up slowly, giving him time to see the movement wasn't threatening, and removed her helmet. Her face was fully visible now, and the scars were even more prominent. One ran from her temple down to her jaw, a deep groove in her scales. Others crossed her cheeks, her neck, burns, cuts, marks from claws and blades. Because I'm tired, she said simply. Tired of being what they made me. And I heard humans understand this, that you turn pain into something else, something beautiful. Jiho's throat was tight. He thought of his sister again, of the years he'd spent angry at every Draken, hating them all without distinction. But standing here, looking at this warrior woman with her scars and her exhausted eyes, he found he couldn't hold on to that hate. Not in this moment. What's your name? He asked. Nari, she said. Shield commander of the 7th Fleet. Or I was. I took leave. They don't know I'm here. This could get you in trouble, Jiho said. Yes, it could get me in trouble too. Nari's expression didn't change. I can pay well. Enough that you could leave this station, if you wanted. Start over somewhere else. Jiho looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at his paintings, at all the faces he'd captured over the years, the hidden pain, the secret joy, the truth beneath the masks. Wasn't that why he painted? To see people as they really were, I don't want your money, Jiho said. If I paint you, I paint what I see. All of it. You can't control what appears on the canvas. Do you understand? Yes, Nari said. That's what I want. Jiho nodded slowly. Then sit. Over there. By the window. The light is better. Nari moved to the chair he'd indicated. She sat carefully, as if the chair might break under her weight. It creaked, but held. She began removing pieces of her armor, setting them on the floor beside her. First, the gauntlets, revealing scaled hands with claws that could tear through metal. Then the shoulder plates, showing more scars running down her arms. How much should I remove? She asked. Enough that you're not hiding, Jiho said, preparing a fresh canvas. Nari paused, then continued. The chest plate came off, revealing a simple black undersuit that showed the shape of more scars beneath. She stopped there, her hands resting on her knees, her posture rigid and formal. You're sitting like you're about to be interrogated, Jiho said, sketching preliminary lines. That's what this feels like, Nari admitted. It's not an interrogation. There are no wrong answers here. In my world, there are always wrong answers, Nari said. Weakness is wrong. Doubt is wrong. Fear is wrong. We cut these things out of ourselves, or we don't survive. Jiho's hand paused on the canvas. Is that what the scars are? Cutting out weakness? Nari was quiet for a moment. Then she touched the long scar on her face. This one. I got this saving my wing sister. She was trapped in a collapsing ship during a battle. I pulled her out, but the metal was hot. It burned through my scales. She died anyway. 3 hours later. I held her while she did. The studio was very quiet. Jiho could hear the hum of the station's air recyclers. The distant sound of someone's music through the walls. I'm sorry, Jiho said. Nari looked at him, surprised. Because loss is loss, Jiho said. It doesn't matter who caused it. Nari stared at him. And something shifted in her expression. The rigid formality cracked slightly. Her shoulders lowered just a fraction of an inch. They said humans were weak, Nari said quietly. That you couldn't survive real war. That you broke too easily. We do break, Jiho said, sketching her face. The line of her jaw, the angle of that scar. We just don't pretend we don't. He worked in silence for a while. And Nari watched him. The golden light from the window caught her scales, making them shine like dark rubies. But Jiho wasn't painting the shine. He was painting the shadows between the scales. The places where pain lived. I lost someone too, Jiho said suddenly, not looking up from his canvas. My sister. During the war. During one of your fleet's attacks. Nari went very still. I could have been there, she said. I fought in many of those battles. I know, Jiho said. And I'm painting you anyway. Why? Jiho finally looked up at her. Because I want to see if I can still see a person. Or if the war took that from me too. Nari held his gaze. Then, slowly, she nodded. Then paint me. Human. Paint everything you see. And we'll both find out. Nari returned 3 days later, just as the station's artificial sunset was painting the corridor outside orange and purple. Jiho heard her footsteps before she knocked. Those heavy, measured steps that made the floor vibrate slightly. She entered without her helmet this time, carrying it under one arm. Her armor was the same, but something about her posture was different. Less formal. Still guarded, but not quite as rigid as before. I wasn't sure you'd come back, Jiho admitted, setting up his paints. I almost didn't, Nari said. She moved to the same chair by the window and began removing her armor pieces. My second officer asked where I kept going. I told him I was consulting with station security about treaty violations. He believed me. We're good at lying to each other. About what? Jiho asked, mixing colors on his palette. He needed that exact shade of deep red for her scales. About everything that matters, Nari said. She set her shoulder plates aside and settled into the chair. about how we feel, about what we've done, about whether we can keep doing it. Jiho began painting, building up layers on the canvas. He'd already done the basic structure in their first session. Now he needed to add depth, detail, truth. "Tell me about the Draken," he said. "Not the military reports. The real things. What's it like growing up in your culture?" Nari was quiet for a moment, her eyes fixed on something far away beyond the studio walls. "We hatch in clutches of 12. From the moment we break the shell, we compete. For food, for attention, for survival. By the time we're 5 years old, we know our ranking. Who's strongest? Who's weakest? Who will become a warrior, and who will serve in lesser roles?" "Sounds harsh," Jiho said, adding shadows to her neck. "It's necessary," Nari said automatically. Then she paused. "That's what they tell us. That it makes us strong. That soft species like humans couldn't survive our childhood." "You're probably right," Jiho said. "We raise our children differently. We protect them. Try to keep them from pain as long as possible." "Does it work?" Nari asked. Jiho thought of his sister. Of her laugh, her terrible jokes, the way she'd held his hand during their father's funeral. He said softly, "Pain finds everyone eventually. But maybe we get more time to be children first." Nari shifted slightly in her chair. "I was never a child. Not the way you mean. I was a hatchling, then a trainee, then a warrior. That's all." "What did you want to be?" Jiho asked. "Before they decided for you?" The question seemed to surprise her. Her golden eyes blinked slowly, and her head tilted slightly. "No one ever asked me that. I'm asking now." Nari looked down at her hands. Her claws flexed slowly, then relaxed. "I wanted to be a keeper of songs," she said quietly. "We have them, you know. Old songs from before the Empire, from when we lived in tribal groups on our homeworld. Songs about stars, and mating flights, and the first fire. I used to listen to the keepers singing, and I wanted to learn all of them. Preserve them. Pass them on. Why didn't you?" Jiho asked, though he thought he knew the answer. "Because I was strong," Nari said. "The strongest in my clutch. And strong ones become warriors. It's the law. The Empire needs soldiers more than it needs singers." She looked up at him. "What about you? Did you always want to paint?" "No," Jiho said. He added a highlight to her cheekbone, where the light caught her scales. "I wanted to be a builder. Architecture. I liked the idea of creating spaces where people could live and be happy. But after the war, after my sister died, I couldn't think about building anymore. Everything felt temporary, fragile, so I started painting instead, trying to capture things before they disappeared. To remember," Nari said. "Yes, to remember." They fell into silence. Jiho painted, and Nari sat. The station hummed around them, a constant background noise of thousands of lives happening simultaneously. Ships docking and departing, aliens from 100 worlds buying and selling and living. After a while, Nari spoke again. "May I see what you're painting?" "Not yet," Jiho said. "It's not ready." "When will it be ready?" "When I find the truth," Jiho said. "Right now, I'm still looking for it." Nari frowned. "I'm sitting right here. What more truth do you need?" Jiho set down his brush and looked at her directly. "You're still hiding," he said gently. "Not physically, but you're sitting there like you're on duty, like you're presenting yourself for inspection. That's not who you are. That's who you were trained to be." "They're the same thing," Nari said. But her voice lacked conviction. "Are they?" Jiho asked. "Is the warrior woman who came to my studio because she was tired the same as the shield commander who follows orders without question?" Nari's jaw tightened. For a moment, Jiho thought she might leave, might decide this was too much, too exposing. But then her shoulders sagged slightly, and she let out a long breath. "I don't know who I am without the armor," she admitted. I've been wearing it so long, following orders so long, being what they needed me to be. When I try to look inside myself for something else, there's just emptiness. Or maybe fear. I can't tell the difference anymore. Jiho felt something twist in his chest. Recognition. He'd felt the same way after his sister died, like he'd been hollowed out and didn't know how to fill the space she'd left behind. That's what I want to paint, he said softly. That honesty. That fear. The person who's still figuring out who she is. Nari met his eyes. Hers were bright. Almost too bright. If you paint that, if anyone sees it, they'll know I'm broken. You're not broken, Jiho said firmly. You're just not a machine. Machines don't get tired. Machines don't question. Machines don't come to strange artists in stations far from home looking for something they can't even name. Then what am I? Nari asked, and her voice was almost a whisper. You're someone who's been hurt, Jiho said. Someone who's survived. Someone who's still surviving. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing there is. Nari stared at him. A single tear, glittering like liquid gold, slid down her scaled cheek. She wiped it away quickly, looking almost angry at herself. Draken don't cry, she said. You just did, Jiho pointed out gently. Then I'm not a good Draken, Nari said bitterly. Maybe, Jiho said, picking up his brush again. But you might be a good person. Nari laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, almost like a bark. But there was something genuine in it, something real. Paint me, human, she said, settling back into the chair. But this time, her posture was different, less formal, more herself. Paint whatever truth you find. I'll try not to hide. That's all I ask, Jiho said. He painted as the artificial sunset faded outside the window, and Nari sat in the gathering darkness. She told him more stories, about battles she'd fought, about warriors she'd lost, about the weight of command and the loneliness of being strong when everyone around you was breaking. And Jiho listened, and painted, and slowly began to see her. Not the Draken warrior, not the shield commander, but Nari. Just Nari. Tired and scarred and scared and still somehow brave enough to sit here and let him see all of it. When she finally left that night, they didn't say goodbye. She just gathered her armor, nodded once, and walked out into the station. But Jiho knew she'd come back. And he knew that when she did, he'd be one step closer to capturing the truth of her. The person behind the scales, and scars, and armor. The person who'd forgotten how to be herself, and was slowly, painfully, learning again. The sessions became routine. Nari came every 3 days. Always in the evening, when the station was transitioning from day cycle to night. She came with less armor, each time. First, just the helmet and gauntlets removed, then the shoulder plates, then the chest armor. By the 5th session, she wore only the underlayer, a simple black material that showed the true geography of her scars. There were so many of them. More than Jiho had initially realized. They covered her arms like maps of forgotten wars. Her torso bore long, parallel marks that could only have come from enormous claws. Her back, which she showed him during the 7th session, was a canvas of old wounds layered over older ones. This one, Nari said, pointing to a circular scar on her shoulder blade, was from a training accident. I was 11. Another hatchling's weapon misfired during drills. It burned through 3 layers of scales. Did you get medical attention? Jiho asked, mixing colors to capture the slight difference in texture between scarred and unscarred scales. Eventually, Nari said. But we were taught to finish the drill first. To show weakness was to invite more attacks. So I completed the exercise with the wound still burning. The instructor praised me. Said I had warrior's discipline. Jiho's hand paused on the canvas. You were 11. Yes. That's a child. Nari shrugged, and he saw her wince slightly at the movement. That old wound still bothered her. Decades later, Draken don't have childhoods. Not the way you think of them. No, Jiho said quietly. You just have wounds. You carry alone. Something flickered across Nari's face. Pain. Maybe. Recognition. She turned her head away, looking out the window at the station's artificial stars. They painted in silence for a while. Jiho worked on the details of her face, the way the scars interrupted the natural pattern of her scales. Each mark told a story, and he was trying to capture them all, to make the painting sing with the history of her survival. Tell me about your sister, Nari said suddenly. Jiho's brush stopped. He hadn't talked about Mina in years. Not really. He'd mentioned her to Nari that first day, but he hadn't told the real stories. The ones that hurt. Her name was Mina, he said slowly. She was 3 years younger than me. Stubborn. Funny. She wanted to be a doctor, but she was terrible at science. She'd mix up chemical formulas and nearly poison herself. I had to help her study all the time. Did she become a doctor? Nari asked. No, Jiho said. She died when she was 19. The evacuation ships were separated during the Draken attack on New Sol Colony. Her ship took a hit. 73 people died. She was one of them. The studio was very quiet. Jiho could hear his own heartbeat, loud in his ears. I'm sorry, Nari said. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. I was at that battle. I was part of the fleet that attacked your colony. Jiho had known this, had suspected it from the moment she walked into his studio. But hearing her say it out loud made it real in a different way. He looked up from his canvas and met her golden eyes. Did you fire the shot that killed her? He asked. I don't know, Nari said honestly. I fired many shots that day. We all did. We were following orders. The colony was considered a strategic target. We were told to disable the evacuation ships, to capture prisoners for intelligence. She paused. Some ships were hit too hard. Some didn't survive. And you didn't question it, Jiho said. It wasn't quite an accusation, but it wasn't not one either. No, Nari said. I didn't. That's what we do. We follow orders. We fight. We win. We don't ask if it's right. And now? Jiho asked. Nari looked at her hands, at the claws that had torn through metal and flesh. Now I question everything, she said quietly. Now I wake up at night and see their faces. The ones we killed. The ones who died because I was good at following orders. And I wonder who I would be if I'd been born somewhere else. In some other culture. If I'd been raised to question instead of obey. She looked up at him. Would you have painted me if you'd known for certain I killed your sister? Jiho thought about it. Really thought about it. He could feel the old anger stirring in his chest, the grief that never fully went away. But he also saw Nari sitting in front of him, stripped of her armor, showing him her scars and her regrets. Yes, he said finally. Because you're not just a weapon anymore. You're trying to be something else. And I want to see what that looks like. Nari's eyes glistened. She blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Growth. I'm not offering forgiveness, Jiho said honestly. I'm offering to see you. That's different. Is it enough? Nari asked. I don't know, Jiho said. But it's what I have to give. They returned to the painting. Jiho worked on the background now, deciding to paint Nari not against some neutral backdrop, but seated with her discarded armor beside her. The armor would be in shadow, almost forgotten, while she sat in light, exposed. Vulnerable. Real. What will happen when you're done? Nari asked. Will you display it? Do you want me to? Jiho asked. Nari was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I want people to see that we're not just monsters. That we hurt too. That we question too. That some of us are trying to be better than what we were made to be. Even if it costs you everything? Jiho asked. I've already lost everything that matters, Nari said. My sense of purpose. My certainty. My ability to follow orders without drowning in guilt. If I go back to the fleet now, I'll just be a shell, a weapon without a soul. At least this way. Maybe something good comes from all the bad I've done. Jiho painted her eyes. That was always the hardest part. The eyes. They had to show everything. The pain. The regret. The tiny seed of hope. That somehow, impossibly, she could become someone different. He mixed gold and amber and the faintest hint of green, the color of new growth. He painted her eyes looking directly out of the canvas, meeting the viewer's gaze. Not challenging, not threatening, just asking to be seen. It's almost done, he said. Nari tensed. May I see it? One more session, Jiho said. I need to finish the hands. Hands are important. They show what we've done, and what we're capable of doing. Nari looked at her own hands, at the claws that could rend metal, at the scales that bore their own history of violence. What will you show? In mine. I don't know yet, Jiho said. I'm still deciding if they're holding on or letting go. Can they be both? Nari asked. Jiho smiled slightly. When Nari left that night, she paused at the door. Thank you, she said, for seeing me. Even after everything. Thank you for letting me, Jiho replied. After she was gone, Jiho stood in front of the canvas for a long time. The painting was nearly complete now. Nari emerged from the canvas like a figure, stepping out of darkness into dawn. Scarred, weary, but somehow, against all odds, still standing. He thought about his sister, about the last time he'd seen her, waving goodbye as she boarded her evacuation ship. She'd been smiling, trying to be brave for him. I'll see you at the rendezvous point, she'd said. But she never made it. For years, he'd carried his anger like armor. It had protected him, given him something to feel besides grief. But looking at Nari's portrait now, at the evidence of her own suffering and struggle, he realized the armor was cracking. Maybe that was okay. Maybe being exposed was the only way to heal. Maybe seeing each other, really seeing each other, was the first step toward becoming something better than what the wars had made them. He picked up his brush and began working on Nari's hands. And as he painted, he decided her hands would be open. Not grasping, not threatening, just open, ready to hold something new, ready to let the old violence finally fall away. The painting was finished. Jiho had sent a message to Nari 3 days ago, asking her to come see it. She'd responded with a single word. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. Now tomorrow was here, and Jiho found himself nervous in a way he hadn't been in years. He'd placed the canvas on an easel in the center of the studio, covered with a cloth. The evening light was perfect, streaming through the window in golden bands. Everything was ready. Nari arrived exactly on time. She wore her full armor, except for her helmet, which she carried under her arm as usual. But Jiho noticed her hands were shaking slightly. Her golden eyes kept darting to the covered canvas. Are you ready? Jiho asked. No, Nari said honestly. But show me anyway. Jiho pulled the cloth away. For a long moment, Nari stood completely still. She stared at the painting, her expression unreadable. Jiho watched her, trying to gauge her reaction. Had he gone too far? Had he seen too much? In the painting, Nari sat in the chair by the window, bathed in warm light. She wore only her underlayer, and every scar was visible, rendered in careful detail. Her armor lay beside her in shadow, discarded and forgotten. Her posture was neither formal nor defeated. She simply existed, present and real. Her hands rested open on her knees. Her face was turned slightly toward the viewer, her golden eyes meeting theirs directly. But it was the expression Jiho had painted that made the portrait extraordinary. Nari's face showed exhaustion. Yes, and pain. The scars told their own stories of violence, but there was something else there too. Something fragile and precious. A quiet hope. A question. A wondering if perhaps she could be more than what she had been. "No one ever saw me like that," Nari whispered. Her voice cracked on the last word. A tear ran down her scaled cheek. Then another. She made no move to wipe them away. She just stood there, crying silently as she stared at her own image. She struggled for words. "I look like a person." "You are a person," Jiho said gently. "Not in the Empire," Nari said. "There, I'm a weapon. A resource. A number in a fleet roster. But here, in this painting." She reached out, as if to touch the canvas, then pulled her hand back. "You made me real. My Lingloft. Also Krianti Pass. You made me real." "I only painted what was already there," Jiho said. Nari turned to him, and her eyes were bright with tears and something that might have been joy. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for seeing me, for showing me I still exist under all the armor and orders and violence." "What will you do now?" Jiho asked. Before Nari could answer, the studio door slid open. 3 Draken warriors entered, moving with military precision. They wore full battle armor, weapons clearly visible on their belts. Behind them came another Draken, older than Nari, with silver threading through his crimson scales. He wore the insignia of a high commander. Nari went rigid. "Commander Hyun," she said, her voice suddenly formal, stripped of all emotion. "Shield Commander Nari," Hyun said coldly. His eyes swept the studio, taking in the paintings, the supplies, and finally settling on the portrait. His expression hardened. "So the reports were true. You allowed a human to paint you, to expose your weakness to the entire station. How did you find out?" Nari asked. "Did you think this would remain secret?" Hyun gestured at the painting. "An art dealer saw it through your window 3 days ago." Word spread. By yesterday, half the station was talking about the Draken warrior who posed for a human painter. By this morning, the Empire knew. Jiho stepped forward. "She has the right to be painted. This is a neutral station. Your military laws don't apply here." Hyun's eyes fixed on him, and Jiho felt the weight of that gaze like a physical thing. This was a predator looking at prey. "You presume to lecture me about rights? Human? You, whose colony forces killed thousands of my people? And your forces killed thousands of ours," Jiho said, fighting to keep his voice steady. "That doesn't change the fact that she came here willingly. This painting belongs to her, not your empire." "Nothing belongs to her," Hyun said. "She belongs to the Empire. Every Draken does. We are born to serve, to fight, to conquer. We don't have the luxury of art and introspection and weakness." He turned back to Nari. "Did I not train you myself? Did I not teach you that strength is everything? You taught me to follow orders," Nari said quietly. "You taught me to never question. You taught me to bury everything that made me an individual and become a perfect weapon." "Yes," Hyun said. "And you were perfect. One of my finest students. You could have become a high commander yourself. Instead, you come here and let a human paint your scars like they're something to be proud of." "They are something to be proud of," Nari said, her voice growing stronger. "They're proof I survived. Proof I endured. Proof I'm more than just a weapon that happens to breathe." "You're defective," Hyun said flatly. "Broken. This is what happens when warriors spend too long away from the fleet. They start thinking, feeling, weakening." He gestured to his guards. "Destroy the painting. We're taking her back to the fleet for reconditioning." The guards moved toward the canvas. Nari stepped in front of it, spreading her arms wide. Hyun's eyes narrowed. "That's a direct order, Shield Commander." "I'm not your Shield Commander anymore," Nari said. "I resign my commission. I reject the Empire, I choose exile. The studio went deathly quiet. The other guards looked at each other, uncertain. In Draken culture, voluntary exile was almost unheard of. It meant giving up everything, becoming nothing in the eyes of your people. Hyun's expression was cold fury. You would throw away centuries of tradition? Your entire heritage? For what? A painting? One. You would throw away centuries. For myself, Nari said. For the person I could have been, if you hadn't spent my whole life making me into a weapon. For the songs I wanted to sing and the life I wanted to live and the feelings I was told were weakness. Feelings are weakness, Hyun snarled. No, Jiho said, surprising himself by speaking. Feelings are what make life worth living. Your empire might have made you stronger by cutting them out. But it also made you less alive, less real, less capable of understanding what you're even fighting for. Hyun turned on him. You dare. He dares because he's right. Nari interrupted. I've killed for the empire. I've bled for it. I've watched friends die for it. And for what? So we can conquer more worlds? Control more space? Prove we're the strongest? She shook her head. Hyun stared at her for a long moment. Then he said, If you do this, you can never return. You'll be declared an enemy of the Empire. Any Draken who encounters you will be ordered to kill you on sight. I know, Nari said. You'll have nothing, Hyun said. No home, no people, no purpose. I'll have myself, Nari said softly. That's more than I've had in a long time. Hyun was silent. Then he reached up and removed something from his armor, a small medal. He looked at it for a moment, then threw it at Nari's feet. I trained you better than this, he said. I expected more from you. I know, Nari said. I'm sorry. I disappointed you. You didn't disappoint me, Hyun said, and for just a moment, his voice was softer, almost sad. You broke my heart. He turned to his guards. Leave the painting. Leave her. She's not worth the diplomatic incident. He looked back at Nari one last time. You're dead to us now. Don't forget that. Then he was gone, taking his guards with him. The door slid shut behind them. Nari stood frozen for a moment. Then her legs gave out, and she collapsed to her knees. Great. Shaking sobs tore through her body. Jiho moved to her side, unsure if he should touch her, offer comfort, or give her space. She made the decision for him, reaching out and gripping his arm like he was the only solid thing in the universe. He knelt beside her and let her cry. Let her mourn the life she'd just given up, the people she'd lost, the empire that had been her entire world. I'm alone now, she whispered. No, Jiho said firmly. You're free. That's different. Nari looked up at him, her golden eyes swimming with tears. Is it? Yes, Jiho said. And you're not alone. I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere. Nari nodded slowly. She turned to look at the painting, still standing in the center of the studio. Now, Jiho said, now we show the galaxy who you really are. The gallery on Velro Station's upper level was designed to showcase art from across the known galaxy. Crystal sculptures from the Luminari, sound paintings from the Vibrathi, holographic memories from the Recollectors. But today, the centerpiece was a traditional oil painting on canvas. Nari's portrait. Jiho stood beside it, watching the crowd gather. He'd been nervous about displaying it publicly, worried about what might happen, but Nari had insisted. If I'm going to be exiled for this, she'd said, then let it mean something. The gallery owner, a four-armed Velrosian named Kento, had been hesitant at first. A Draken portrait? That's politically sensitive. We could lose business, face diplomatic complaints. But when he'd seen the painting, really looked at it, his objections had faded. This isn't political, he'd said quietly. This is truth. We'll display it. Now, 3 days after the confrontation with Commander Hyun, The gallery was packed. Aliens from dozens of species moved through the space, talking in various languages, their voices creating a low hum of conversation. Many stopped at Nari's portrait, staring at it in silence. Nari stood in the corner of the gallery, trying to be inconspicuous despite her 7-foot frame. She wasn't wearing her armor. Instead, she wore simple civilian clothes that Jiho had helped her acquire. Dark pants, a loose shirt that accommodated her build. She looked smaller without the armor. More vulnerable. More herself. "They're staring," she whispered to Jiho. "Let them," Jiho said. "That's the point." A human woman approached the painting. She was older, with gray hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of hard years. She studied the portrait for a long time, then turned to Jiho. "Yes," Jiho said. "I lost my son in the war," the woman said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. "The Draken destroyed his colony. I hated them for years. I still hate what they did." She looked back at the painting. "But this makes me see them differently. Not the empire, not the military, but the individuals, the ones who hurt too." She turned to Nari, who had frozen in place. "I don't forgive what your people did," the woman said. "I can't. But I see you now. The person, not the weapon. That matters." Before Nari could respond, the woman walked away. Nari looked shaken, her hands trembling slightly. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "How to be seen like this." "One moment at a time," Jiho said. More people approached throughout the day. Some were hostile, spitting angry words about Draken atrocities. Others were curious, asking Nari questions about her culture, her experiences. A few were supportive, telling her they admired her courage. But it was late afternoon when something unexpected happened. A Thorian veteran, his exoskeleton marked with battle scars, stopped in front of the painting. He stared at it for several minutes. Then he turned to Kento. "I want to be painted too," he said. Kento blinked in surprise. "I'm sorry?" "This human painter," the Thorian said, gesturing at Jiho. "He sees truth. I have scars too. Stories no one knows. I want someone to see them, to paint them, to show that I'm more than just a soldier." Before Jiho could respond, a Keltharian female stepped forward. "And me. I served in the merchant fleet during the war. We were considered non-combatants, but we still fought, still bled, still lost people. But no one remembers us. I want to be remembered." "Me too," said a young Velrosian, barely more than a juvenile. "My parent died in the station defense. I want to honor them." Within an hour, Jiho had 17 commissions. Warriors, survivors, refugees, veterans, from half a dozen species. All wanting to be seen the way Nari had been seen. All wanting their scars and stories painted in truth. Jiho looked at Nari, overwhelmed. "I can't paint them all. Not alone. It would take years." "Then teach others," Nari said. "Teach other artists to see this way. To paint truth instead of propaganda." It was a simple idea, but it resonated. Within a week, Jiho had gathered 5 other artists, each from a different species, each willing to learn his technique. They called themselves the Witnesses. Their purpose was simple: to paint people as they truly were, scars and all, and to show the galaxy that everyone had depths beyond their surface roles. The movement grew. More portraits appeared. More stories were told through paint and canvas. The gallery became a pilgrimage site for those who wanted to be seen, to be witnessed, to have their truth acknowledged. But not everyone was happy about it. The Draken Empire issued formal complaints. Several other military powers joined them, arguing that the portraits were undermining discipline and encouraging desertion. There were protests, threats, attempts to shut down the gallery, but Velros Station held firm. Station Administrator Yuki, a human woman with steel in her spine, declared the gallery protected under free expression laws. Art is not subject to military censorship, she announced publicly. These portraits stay. 3 months after Nari's portrait was first displayed, she stood in Jiho's studio, watching him work on a new painting. The subject was a Keltharian engineer who'd lost 3 limbs in a shipyard accident during the war. The engineer sat patiently as Jiho captured the story in her mechanical replacements and the determination in her eyes. "I never thought this would happen," Nari said. "That one painting could start something so big." "It wasn't the painting," Jiho said, mixing colors. "It was you. Your courage to be vulnerable. That's what inspired others." "I was terrified," Nari admitted. "I know," Jiho said. "That's what made it brave." Nari smiled. It was easier now, smiling. She'd been practicing, relearning all the expressions the Empire had trained out of her. "I've been talking with some of the other exiles," she said. "Draken who left the military. There are more than I thought. Dozens, maybe hundreds across the galaxy. They're lost, like I was. They don't know who to be without orders." "What are you thinking?" Jiho asked. "I'm thinking I could help them," Nari said. "I could create a network, a support system, a place for Draken and other military exiles to find new purpose, new lives." Jiho looked at her. The change in her over 3 months was remarkable. She stood straighter now, but not with military rigidity, with confidence, her own confidence, earned through choosing herself. "That's a good idea," he said. "I learned from the best," Nari said, gesturing at him. "You showed me that seeing people is an act of revolution, that acknowledging pain doesn't make you weak, that truth matters more than propaganda." "Those are human ideas," Jiho said. "No," Nari said firmly. "Those are good ideas. They don't belong to one species. They belong to anyone brave enough to embrace them." She walked to the window, looking out at the station. Ships came and went, carrying people from all corners of the galaxy. So many lives, so many stories. "You know what the strangest thing is?" "One," she said. "I thought losing the Empire would destroy me. That without my rank and purpose, I'd be nothing." "And?" Jiho prompted. "And I've never felt more alive," Nari said. She turned back to him, her golden eyes bright. "For the first time, I get to choose who I am. Every day, I choose. That's more freedom than I ever had as a SHIELD commander." The Keltharian engineer stood up, her session complete. "Thank you," she told Jiho, "for seeing me. Thank you for letting me," Jiho replied. After the engineer left, Nari helped Jiho clean his brushes. It had become their routine. She'd work with him, learning the basics of painting, though she claimed she had no talent for it. But Jiho thought she was wrong. He'd seen her sketches. Rough, uncertain, but honest. She was learning to see the way he saw, to find truth in faces and bodies and scars. "I've been thinking about my wing sister," Nari said suddenly. "The one who died, the one whose death gave me this scar." She touched her face, tracing the long mark. "I used to think the scar was a reminder of failure, that I hadn't been fast enough, strong enough to save her. And now?" Jiho asked. "Now I think it's a reminder that I tried," Nari said. "That I loved her enough to risk myself. That's not failure. That's the most human thing I ever did." Jiho smiled. "Welcome to humanity. We're terrible at saving everyone, but we never stop trying." Nari laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and genuine. "Is that what makes humans special? Your stubborn refusal to give up on people?" "Maybe," Jiho said. "We're not the strongest species. We're not the smartest or the fastest or the most technologically advanced. But we're very, very good at seeing each other, at recognizing pain and trying to heal it, at making art out of suffering, at refusing to let anyone be just a number or a weapon or a statistic. It's a good way to be." Nari said softly. That evening, they walked through the station together. Past the markets, where vendors sold food from 100 worlds. Past the docking bays, where ships prepared for departure. Past the residential areas where families from countless species lived side by side, they stopped in front of the gallery. Through the window, they could see Nari's portrait, still displayed in the place of honor. People stood before it, some silent, some talking, all seeing her truth. Do you regret it? Jiho asked. Giving up everything for this? Nari looked at the painting. At the version of herself that was scared and scarred, and somehow still hopeful. No, she said. I don't regret it at all. She turned to Jiho. You gave me something I didn't know I needed. You showed me that being seen is more important than being strong. That we all deserve to be witnessed as we truly are. You taught me something too, Jiho said. What? That forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, Jiho said. That you can acknowledge the pain someone caused and still see them as a person. That healing is possible even when the wounds run deep. He paused. I still miss my sister. I always will. But painting you, seeing you, it helped me remember that the people who hurt us are still people. And people can change. They stood together in the evening light, watching the station's artificial stars begin to glow. Two people from opposite sides of a war, brought together by art and honesty and the courage to be vulnerable. Behind them, the gallery filled with more visitors. More people coming to see the portraits. More stories being shared. More scars being witnessed. And somewhere in the galaxy, more exiles were finding their way to freedom. More soldiers were learning they could be something besides weapons. More people were discovering that being seen was the first step toward being whole. It had started with one painting. One human painter and one dragon woman brave enough to show her scars. But it had become something bigger. A movement. A revolution of truth. And it was only beginning.